times because of his friendship with Rabindranath Tagore. And that friendship was kind of nurtured, was made possible by C.F. Andrews. So Gandhi and Tagore were in correspondence even while Gandhi was in South Africa. Now, this contact between Tagore and Gandhi and Shantiniketan also made it possible for the artist in Shantiniketan to get to know Gandhi from close, to observe him, to interact with him, and as we will see, also to collaborate with him. Because of this contact that Gandhi had with Tagore, it's not surprising that the first artist who represented Gandhi were from Bengal. Because probably one of the earliest representations of Gandhi after he returned to India was by Abanindranath Tagore, who was the nephew of Rabindranath. Then what probably we have is when Gandhi changes his way of dressing, he takes on the familiar dress that we know him in today. And at this point, there is another drawing of him by Mughal Teg, who was also, he didn't study art in Shantiniketan, but he studied in the school in Shantiniketan and studied under Abanindranath later. And so we have these first two images of Gandhi in India are by these artists. But I'm not going to talk about people who represented Gandhi, the portraits, but going to talk about artists' response to his work, to his ideas, to his projects. So that's the main concern. Not Gandhi the person per se, but Gandhi the leader, the man who was trying to make a change in India, and how did they respond to these changes. Now, of course, one of the reasons that Bengal would have also taken to Gandhi in a certain way was because even before Gandhi arrived, there was the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, and which happened, as you know, around 1945. And during the Swadeshi movement, many of the Bengal artists were inspired by that, were associated with that, and they were trying to think about a cultural identity for India. And that was already there. I mean, this link between nationalism and art was already there. And so when Gandhi arrives, so you can think that these people would also take notice of him. But there were also kind of new kinds of developments. His friendship with Tagore, for instance. Gandhi and Tagore did not agree on many things. But Tagore was, in some sense, the predecessor of Gandhi. Because he was what the art critic Ananda Kumarasamy said very early in the 20th century. One of the first proponents of what we call creative or positive Swadeshi. I mean, not as a reaction, but a constructive approach to nationalism. And there were many things that Tagore anticipated, in which Tagore anticipated Gandhi. The reformation of the villages, uplift of the villages and peasants. Now, Tagore had started working on all this, at the very beginning of the 20th century. That's at least 10 to 15 years before Gandhi arrived in India from South Africa. Now, he also wanted to use education as a tool for bridging the rural urban divide in India. So these were all, if you look at later work of Gandhi, these are all issues that Tagore was trying to bring forth and act upon. But as I said, they sometimes disagreed on some of the details. And this disagreement also helped the artist in Shantiniketan to respond to Gandhi in a different way. Not just do his portraits, but look at them in relation to each other. So, in a sense, we might say that for them, Gandhi and Tagore were interrelated figures. Now, one of the first works that in which this is represented is this painting, again by Abhinavanath Tagore. And it has three figures, the three interrelated people I talked about, Gandhi, Rabindranath, and C.F. Andrews. Now, when Gandhi was planning the non-cooperation movement, he came to Calcutta and he had a conversation with Rabindranath. That's also one of the points where their disagreements become more clear. And they had held a closed-door meeting in Tagore's house in Calcutta, and there were only these three people, Tagore, Gandhi, and Andrews. So this happened in September 1921, and this painting is a kind of reflection on that conversation. At that point of time, all three of them didn't reveal what they talked about. But from immediately after that, from Rabindranath's writing and Gandhi's replies, we know that the discussion should have been about non-cooperation and their views about it. Now, in the painting, we see three figures facing each other. And we might think about it as a reflection of what Gandhi called when he wrote a reply to Rabindranath and published it. It was called The Poet's Anxiety. So we might think that this painting is a reflection of the poet's anxiety. So there are three of them, facing each other and almost floating against a neutral ground. And you can see Rabindranath is thoughtful. But you can see Gandhi, in a sense, has a little smile, impish smile on his face. It's almost as if Gandhi had thrown up something which put the other two people in the painting into serious thought. What will be the outcome of? Now, what was Rabindranath's dilemma? Now, Rabindranath was absolutely certain that Gandhi had made an emotional connection with the people of India. And he was very happy about that. Because when he was trying in the early 20th century, he was telling the Congress leaders to bring the normal people, the common people, into the fold, to think about them, to respond to their issues. which Rabindranath thought that at that point of time the Congress leaders were not doing. So this is exactly what Gandhi did. So he was extremely happy about it, and he admired Gandhi for doing this. But he also had a doubt because it was Rabindranath's wish that young Indians would come forward and participate in a new kind of education that will help to transform India. I mean, at least answer those questions that he was concerned with. The problem of the villages, how, I mean, village India and urban India were completely disconnected and so on. But for him, the solution to overcome these divisions was education. Until Gandhi's inspiration, Rabindranath thought that the young people are more willing to boycott education rather than to opt for the right kind of education to achieve what he and Gandhi wanted. So his anxiety was around that. What will be the impact of non-cooperation and various other activities that Gandhi was planning on the end, and how that would affect what he thought is the most important tool for transforming India, education. So we can see this thoughts in letters that Rabindranath wrote to Andrews especially, but also to others. So even before Gandhi and he met in Calcutta, he had written to Andrews, "For the last 14 months, my one thought was to bring India into touch with the living activities of the larger world. It was not because I thought that India would be the sole gainer by this contact, but because I was certain that when the dormant mind of India was aroused from its torpor, she would be able to offer something for the need of humanity which would be valuable." So his difference with Gandhi was about what he thought, not only what India could gain, but he was also thinking about what India can offer to the world. Of course, in some sense, the anxiety was somewhat misplaced, although some of the things that he was anxious about happened. Many people left colleges and universities and schools and joined the national movement. But actually, many of those people who left the schools and colleges eventually came up and landed in Shantiniketan. So many of Gandhi's followers, who were sometimes thrown out of school, thrown out of universities, they ended up in Shantiniketan. And a couple of them today, I will show at least one of them who did exactly that. So many people who actually worked with Rabindranath later were people who went into the nationalist movement politically and then at some point came to Shantiniketan. So there was also not only the friendship between Gandhi and Rabindranath, but there was also this connection brought about by people who came to work in Shantiniketan. Now, we can also know there were various things in which they operated. One of the persons who really came close to Gandhi, I mean, is Nandalal Bose, whom we can see in this, I mean, picture. Of course, he's to the, to the right, just behind Gandhi. Gurudayal Malik is actually walking with him. But so this is when during one of Gandhi's visit to Shantiniketan. Now, there were many people who thought about these encounters between Gandhi and Rabindranath and were torn apart in some sense. But the person who benefited most from this was Rabindranath. Nandalal. Nandalal Bose, he synthesized within his work the attitudes of Gandhi and Rabindranath. And they had both, as you know, Gandhi and Rabindranath had very different ideas about art and aesthetics. Gandhi, before his contact with the Shantiniketan people really matured, until early 1920s, he believed that art was not very important. He thought that what he is interested is the inner beauty of man, the beauty of human mind. He was not interested in external beauty, which is not what artists were mainly interested in. And he thought that external beauty was only something that the rich would be interested in. Called it the rich man's garden. Now, Rabindranath held a different view. He thought that even the poor, they created art, they enjoyed art, they needed art. So the first people who asked Gandhi about these questions. The first person we know in recorded history to have interrogated Gandhi on art was an young student from Shantiniketan, G. Ramachandran, who later became a Gandhian and established Gandhian institutions in Tamil Nadu. Now, Gandhi gave his views, along the lines which I just told to him. Now, later, of course, as Gandhi began to work, it impacted people like Nandalal Bose and various other artists we'll talk about. Nandalal was already Rabindranath's right-hand man in bringing about cultural change and how to use art for that. He would also soon become Gandhi's right-hand man. So in a sense, he actually served both these people who had slightly different views about art. And he helped in transforming Gandhi's views on art, along with others, including Rabindranath. Now, when he saw Gandhi working in India, he realized that he was proposing a new kind of nationalism, which was different from the Swadeshi. The Swadeshi was more interested in cultural issues, cultural identity. On the political level, it was trying to petition the government to do some things which are more favorable to Indians and so on. But Gandhi's method being different, he recognized that the new nationalism of Gandhi offered a new role for the Indian artist. That is, of how an artist can participate in nation building, not just think about cultural identity, recall the past, and so on. The first incident that really attracted or really shook Nandalal was the Dundee March. He has painted it about, 3 times. We will look at, and also done a poster, we will look at 2 paintings and the poster. Now he recognized two things, that the Dandi March was a simple thing, but it captured the imagination of not only Indians across India, not just the people who walked with him, but also people in all other parts of India. And I mean, as you know, that when he was planning the Dandi March, none of the Congress leaders thought that this is a worthwhile project. But immediately when he started the Dandi March with his followers, the world took notice. Not only that rest of India took notice, but the world took notice of Gandhi and the Indian freedom movement. So it was well planned, it was very simple, it was imaginative, it was emphatic, and it was a highly symbolic political gesture. Nandalal realized all these things, and in his paintings, he tried to bring this about. So there is Gandhi at the center, walking briskly, and behind, I'm just showing you some of the details, where all those 78 people who walked with him. And you can see them. There are men, women, people of different occupations, very ordinary people. So he shows Gandhi as a people's leader, as a leader who is first among Indians. And these are not the big political leaders, but the ordinary men and women of India. So there is another version of that with those 75, 78 figures in the background, and Gandhi's figure, which is large, leading them. Now, besides capturing what he saw as the impact of the Dandi March, what he did was also to create a poster for it. Now, this was a brilliant work. It is as simple, as emphatic, as eye-catching as Gandhi's protest march. Okay? Walking from making a little symbolic salt. It was of the same stature, if you think in terms of design, something which is very simple, but which is very eye-catching, which will remain in your mind. Okay? Now, he was able to create an equivalent of the Dandi March in terms of pictorial design. And no surprise, if you think probably this is the most reproduced image of Gandhi in India or anywhere. You have so many photographs, so many paintings of Gandhi, but it is this image of Gandhi by Nandalal Bose that is most represented, most remembered, and I think which you can see endlessly reproduced, because it really allows all these things. It is simple, it is easy to reproduce, it is also very strong in its image, and so on. Now, there were these, thing, as I said, that just like it impacted Nandalal, it also impacted other people. And Gandhi was being questioned about his interest or lack of interest in art. And almost till about 1930, you can see that Gandhi was more or less repeating what he's told, the young G. Ramachandran. And you can see almost a few weeks later, he was talking to Dilip Kumar Roy, the musician in Calcutta. And he told Roy, my aim is ever and always that of public weal. Art is acceptable to me only to the extent it tends to the welfare of the people at large. Art has a place in life only when artists make their art helpful to human welfare and enjoyable even by the common man. So this was something that Gandhi held on to very strongly. Now, there are many, many quotations that I can give which repeats these ideas. Now, until about the beginning of 30s, this was Gandhi's viewpoint. Because only that art which touches the inner world he thought was real art. That was only the art that served truth. All other art is diverse from truth. And anything that is not connected with truth for him was ugliness. So, but you might think that this is almost a Tolstoyan idea of or moralistic view of art. But it began to change in the 1930s. Two things. He founded the All India Village Industries Association. And when he founded that, he wanted Rabindranath to be one of the advisors to that organization. And Rabindranath, immediately protested and said that it should not be just the crafts that should be looked at, but also the arts. So he sent his message through Kumarappa, who was one of those Gandhian followers, who was in charge largely of establishing the All India Village Industries Association. And Rabindranath wrote, "The economic life of a nation is not an isolated fact as Mahatmaji imagines. And today, side by side with economic poverty, we are faced with cultural poverty, which puts us to shame. Shame that is in no way lessened when we consider what we once were. Our art treasures are today found in museums outside India, and our village artists are dying out. Please tell Mahatmaji that art is not a luxury of the well-to-do. The poor man needs it as much as and employs it as much in his cottage building, his pots, his floor decorations, etc. If Mahatmaji's men go around collecting specimens of village industries, why can they not look for and collect specimens of various indigenous arts spread all over our land and waiting to be recherished?" Now, this question was again raised before, this was 1934. It was raised before Gandhi by a journalist who quoted Rabindranath and asked him what was his response. And Gandhi told this journalist that every message coming from Dr. Tagore must receive respectful attention from me. I quite believe that we have got to take care of village arts by his assistance. We shall not neglect the arts. He would not let us neglect, even if we forget our duties. So Gandhi had begun to appreciate the outward aesthetic or aspect of human actions, especially in rural crafts, as he engaged himself in rural uplift. So you know that this is the time that he travels across India, especially to study the poverty of the villages. And when he goes to these villages, through Orissa, through south, through the west, so when he's traveling, he also begins to notice that these people, like Tagore said, are also creating beauty. So in the Harijan, he writes in September 1934 that the reorganization of the village that he wishes to do would include taking art, education, cleanliness, prosperity, and dignity to them. So you can see that in the new movement, he puts art at the beginning of the list of things he wants to do. Art, education, cleanliness, prosperity, and dignity to the villages. And then he says in the same place, he writes that when I look back, the only precedent I see to this is the research carried out in Shantiniketan. So this is his quote, research carried out in Shantiniketan. So he is actually encountering Shantiniketan, Tagore, its artist. I mean, Gandhi is beginning to change his mind on these issues. And when he started his Museum of Craft, he took help from Surendranath Kar, who was the person who Tagore employed to build the buildings in Shantiniketan. So the same person also built the Gandhi Museum. And he was one of Nandalal's colleagues in Shantiniketan. 2 years later, he also takes help from Nandalal to do an exhibition at the Congress meeting in Lucknow in 1936. He invited Nandalal to organize an exhibition at this, annual meeting of the Congress. And he wanted Nandalal to create an exhibition which included not only village crafts from across India, but also live demonstrations of craft by craftspersons. So Nandalal, on his request, did do this exhibition. He organized this exhibition, brought craft objects from all parts of India. He brought artists, craftsmen from different parts of India. He also put in some modern works, including works by people like Jamil Roy and other artists from Bengal and Shantiniketan and all that. Now, Gandhi was completely, mesmerized by this exhibition. When he inaugurated it, he said, "This exhibition, to my mind, brings out concretely for the first time the conception of a true rural exhibition I have nursed in my breast for several years. Let me tell you that you will have an inkling of the inside even from where you are sitting. For in front of you are no triumphal arches, but there are simply but exquisitely decorated walls done by Motilal Bose, the eminent artist from Shantiniketan, and his co-workers, who have tried to represent all the villagers' crafts in simple artistic symbols. And when you go inside the art gallery on which Babu Nandalal Bose has lavished his labors for weeks, you will feel as I did, like spending there hours together." So you can see that this collaboration with Nandalal was also very important in Gandhi's attitude to art gradually shifting. Now, Nandalal also found Gandhi very attentive to art. About it, Nandalal wrote, "I have been told before that Babu did not have much interest in the arts. I realized the mistake when I found him looking around the Lucknow exhibition and noticing each painting with the critical interest of a connoisseur. In fact, there is a very famous episode that while they were cleaning up the place after putting up the things, they forgot to remove a bucket which was somewhere behind some screen. And Gandhi, walking in, noticed it. And he said, "Do you think that bucket there looks beautiful?" So he noticed between his idea of cleanliness, order, and so on, and beauty, he necessarily brought about a connection, and which Nandalal was surprised to see. Now, you can see that from his appreciation of the exhibition that he's willing to talk about beauty, if only in relation to unostentatious handcrafted objects. Now, in 1937, he was talking to the Congress leaders in August 1937. And that was later reproduced in his magazine Harijan. And there he said, "It is hardly necessary for me to point out that simplicity does not mean shoddiness. There is a beauty and an art in simplicity, which he who runs may see. It does not require money to be neat, clean, and dignified. Pomp and pageantry are often synonymous with vulgarity." Now, he also gave the same brief to Nandalal. The next year, he wanted Nandalal to do another exhibition at High Congress. And he wrote to Nandalal saying that you gave much at Lucknow. I now want more for High. For the first time in the history of Congress, it is to be held in a village. The exhibition will be the chief attraction for the numerous villagers who are expected to flock to Faizpur. It must provide solid education for them, and the whole show must be in the village setting. How is it that to be? We have to forget the city scale of bigness and great expenditure. Your art has to come to the rescue. I have asked Shekhar Bankar, who was his assistant in this putting up the exhibition, not to spend more than rupees 5,000 on the exhibition. I know that it can be done for that amount and yet be made attractive. The village Sarangi provides all the music the most expensive piano has ever provided. Now, this was partly because Nandalal was trying to excuse himself. So he said, he also said later, next year, because there are a lot of people thinking that Gandhi was favoring Nandalal. So he thought he should not get into that and he tried to excuse himself. So he said, I am not an expert architect, I don't know anything about it. That's what the last sentence says. A village sarangi player can give everything that the most expensive piano player can do. Now, he went to Faizpur and he created the whole structure, the whole place with local materials. Bamboo, grass, little piece of wood, and all that. And this is a drawing of Faizpur by Nandalal. And you can see the structure was quite similar, and you have a photograph where you can see Nehru addressing the gathering. Now, for Nandalal, this was not very difficult because Shantiniketan in those early days also did not have money. So they were used to producing things which were beautiful and yet not expensive, with very minimal material resources. So, although this was a challenge that Gandhi threw at him, that the idea of creating harmony with very little was something that Nandalal was familiar with. And he was also familiar with the Gandhian idea of the convergence of art and craft. One of the important things of his educational method in Shantiniketan was not to distinguish between art and craft, which was always there, especially in colonial India, because this is a legacy that we got from Europe after the Renaissance. So, as Nandalal wrote, with reeds, bamboos, and timber, the exhibition hall had been decorated in a simple manner. We carefully saw to it that aesthetic demands were not sacrificed. For the first time, the general public had a chance to see how much beauty could be generated by using very ordinary things. Though we ourselves were accustomed in the ashram, by which he meant Shantiniketan, to decorate in this simple fashion. Thus, the ascent of Gandhian aesthetics was closely intertwined with the spread of Shantiniketan aesthetics. And after this, Gandhi again called him to participate in the Haripura Congress. And Gandhi always told Nandalal, don't bring expensive works from Shantiniketan to decorate the place. But it has to be very simple things and which the villagers who come should be able to respond to. So he gave similar instructions on the creation of Haripura. And this was even a larger gathering. So you can see that how many, there was almost a temporary township had to be put up for all the leaders who came from across India, but also for the village visitors. And we know that more than 1 lakh of people, mainly villagers, visited the Haripura Congress every day. And this is the little hut that they made for Gandhi. And this is a drawing of it. And while he was working, he was also documenting all the local craftsmen. This is something that Nandalal started doing maybe as early as 1930. When he traveled, went somewhere, he tried to look at how the local craftsmen worked, what they did, what they produced. He made studies of all that. And you can see that he brings that into the Haripura posters. They are now very famous. They are collected and it is in our National Museum, National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. Now, he embellished, there were 51 gates at Haripura. He embellished all these gates with these posters, and some of them were also put up in the rooms or the huts where Gandhi and some of the other leaders stayed. Now, this was all done by Nandalal himself. He did about 90 odd posters, and then some of his students and colleagues, including Binod Bihari, copied them. And in all, they made 4 or 5 sets, over 400 copies, of these Haripura things. And they were used to decorate the whole place. And you can see that this, where the work that the villagers knew, this was their daily life, this was in what they could respond to very easily, whether it is their chores, their music, their beliefs. Now, these were the subject matter that he took. But you can also see that he is doing in a style that reminded them of folk arts. If you look carefully, it is not the normal kind of folk art, it's much more sophisticated, it's more individualistic. But he is demonstrating to Gandhi in a way that you can do very masterly individualistic work using a language, using subject matter, which will appeal to the common man, to the peasant, to the villager, and to the knowledgeable art connoisseur at the same time. So that division that Gandhi was afraid of, Nandalal was demonstrating it can be easily overcome. Now, of course, in a sense, you can see that the amalgamation of the Shantiniketan aesthetics and Gandhian values were sort of completely achieved in the Haripura posters. Of course, Gandhi visiting Shantiniketan later and looking at some of them. Now, Gandhi certainly recognized the shift that Nandalal brought about at Haripura. Again, when he was opening the Khadi and Village exhibition, he said, at many places in this exhibition, you will see art. I cannot describe it to you. It will strike your eye. We shall get to see here how a particular thing could be displayed to the best advantage of exhibiting in a certain way. art is a means of bringing out the inner as well as the outer beauty of a thing. So if you remember that 1924 answer that Gandhi gave to young Ramachandran, that he was only interested in the inner beauty and he was not concerned about the outer beauty that artists are interested in. But here he is saying art is a means of bringing out the inner as well as the outer beauty of a thing. So this is perhaps the closest he came to accepting art as a thing of external beauty. Several years later, in a letter to another Shantiniketan student who also worked with him, Devi Prasad Gupta, who also became a big peace activist, in 1945, Gandhi wrote to him. He gave a written reply to Devi Prasad Gupta's question. And he wrote, I have already told you who is a true artist. Nanda Babu comes very close to my ideal, though perhaps he is not the perfect ideal. However, he is so big a man that it would be highly improper of me to say anything in criticism of him. So even Nandalal probably missed something. But of all Indian artists, Gandhi certainly kind of acknowledged that he was the man who came close to his idea of art, what kind of art he needed. After Rabindranath's death, Gandhi came to Shantiniketan in 1945. And this is Gandhi sitting in the art studio at Kalabhavan and talking to the students and teachers. Now, this was Gandhi's last visit. Now, he came to Shantiniketan after Rabindranath's death because in 1941, before Rabindranath died, he had entrusted Shantiniketan to Gandhi. He said, after my death, you should take care of this institution. And Gandhi had agreed. So he visited and he kind of tried to, meet the demands of Shantiniketan, take care of it economically and so on. And when he came in 45, somebody put him this question, should Shantiniketan allow itself to be drawn into political work? And to this question, Gandhi answered, I have no difficulty in saying that Shantiniketan and Vishwabharati ought not to be mixed up with politics. Every institution has its limitations. This institution should set limitations upon itself unless it is to be cheap. When I say that Shantiniketan should not get mixed up with politics, I do not mean that it should have no political ideal. Complete independence must be its ideal, as it is that of the country. But that very ideal would require it to keep out the present day political turmoil. I was asked this question when I was here 30 years ago, and the reply I then gave was the same as I have given today. In fact, it applies with even greater force today. Now, as I said, this was one of the anxieties of Rabindranath, the impact of Gandhian politics on Shantiniketan. And although many of his co-workers, including Nandalal, were also followers of Gandhi, he had told them that you are free to participate, but don't drag the school, the college, the students into it. Even the students like G. Ramachandran and many others were Gandhians, but he thought that this should be kept separate, and this is exactly what Gandhi also told them after Tagore's death. Of the people who probably kept to this idea most was Vinod Bihari. And Vinod Bihari himself has written about his detachment from political movements. And in his autobiographical essay, he writes, the Gandhian movement started in my early youth. Under its influence, I wore homespun. gave up cigarettes for BDs, even tried a bit to spin on the tapri, but nothing more. During the non-cooperation movement, a friend of mine asked me if I was not ashamed to sit rubbing paint on paper in such days of national distress. Some of his close friends did participate in the non-cooperation movement. But I have done precisely that all my life without any sense of shame. And yet, within a few weeks or months of Gandhi's last visit to Shantiniketan, he would embark on his magnum opus, a mural which runs across 3 walls in the Hindi Bhavan of Shantiniketan. I mean, it was Hazari Prasad Dwivedi who asked him to do the mural, and this is the first wall. And was created, this is 80 feet and it's about 8 feet in height. And it revolves around the life of medieval saints of India. And it's a mural which comes very close to Gandhi's ideals. Now, this mural was done between 1946, around November he started, and he completed it in the summer of 1947. So it is just before independence. But if you look at the dates, it is also the date when communal violence was breaking out in Calcutta, 1946. I mean, from August onwards. So communal violence was breaking out. And he is painting this while Gandhi is trying to put down this communal violence in Calcutta, in Naukali, and here in Bihar. So it is against this background, at this point, that he is doing this mural. At the center of this wall, you can see the figure of Ramanujan. To the other end, to your right, you can see the seated figure of Kabir. In the next wall, you see the whole magnificent view of Benares, and you have Tulsi Das at the center. In the next, you see in the beginning, the first part, Surdas, then Guru Gobind, who also has deep roots with the city, and then you see a village. Now, this is Vinod Bihari's meditation on the history of India and its future. If we go back to the beginning, you can see the early part is the Himalayas, and there are the seekers, the philosophers, the thinkers. There is no worldly life there, but people who are mainly devoted themselves to ideas. If you leave that first part and look at the center of it, where Ramanuj comes, there are teachers, there are followers, there is everyday life. And if you look at the last third, you can see around Kabir are craftsmen. People who were, most of the sons of the medieval period, Bhakti period, came from craftsmen's background. So they are there. Then you have craftsmen continuing Tulasi, and then you have people singing music, poets, and so on, leading to Surdas in the next one. And then there is even a certain energy and militancy in the sons, which Guru Gobind represents. And it ends again in the villages, where, there are no big historic figures. So at the beginning of the mural and the end of the mural, there are no historic figures. There are seekers, then there are ordinary men at the end. And so it's a presentation of Indian civilization or its ideas, core ideas, starting from the mountains and going into the plains. But there is also one more thing, that the medieval period was the thing that the period in Indian history that Gandhi, Tagore, and also Nehru thought should be the model for New India. That is a period where you don't have organized religions, where there is more openness, there is more harmony between people, and so that is the ideal that the founding fathers of our nation wanted to build the new India on the basis of those ideas. So this mural, which is done at a critical juncture in Indian history, is also thinking about the future India that we need to build. So it is a discourse on the past, but it is also a legislation on the future of India. And it acquires a political urgency if you think about what Gandhi was doing at that moment, trying to control, religious discord in India. Now, the other person who was also closely associated with Nandalal and taught in Shantiniketan was Ramkinkar Beij. Ramkinkar Beij, in his very early years when he was in school, he participated in the freedom struggle, especially by doing portraits, posters, etc. For the movement. But he also contributed in other ways. Like in the 30s, when Gandhi was trying to bring and talk about the peasants or the poor people, when he was going through the most famine-affected areas of Orissa and so on, Ramkinkar made the sculpture of a Sandal family. Now, today it might not strike us what is so important about it. But before this sculpture, there was not a single sculpture in India which took the common man, the tribal, the poor peasant, and made him such a heroic figure. This is the first sculpture in Indian history where that is happening. And this is happening against the awakening of the village India that Gandhi was trying to do. And of course, the leftists in India were trying to do at that point. So this is in 1938-39. So you have Gandhian engagement with the village, you have the IPTA and other movements, the progressive writers who are trying to do, and the Kisan Sabhas and all that being done. So you can see an artist responding to these ideas, not representing Gandhi, but understanding how important that these ideas were. Now he also responded to Gandhi, but he responded to Gandhi when he was assassinated. And like Vinod Bihari, Ramkinkar had otherwise stayed away from the national movement after his school days. But later, when somebody asked him, he told, "I am an artist, not a political man. My job is to paint pictures and build sculptures. If I had to work for the country, it had to be through these only." Yes, Gandhiji's movement did stir up waves in the heart. In fact, Gandhiji's character drew me a lot, not just his politics. In his mind, Gandhi, Tagore, and Marx, in a sense, their visions overlapped because all of them in some way talk about human equality and unity. And he wanted to represent them together, especially Gandhi and Tagore. So he actually wanted to do a big sculpture in Shantiniketan of Gandhi and Tagore walking together. But as I said, Shantiniketan those days didn't have the resources, so he couldn't do that. So he did small works of both of them. He did a beautiful portrait of Tagore when he was mourning for C.F. Andrews after his death. He went and studied him and he did this beautiful work. And he also did Gandhi. Probably on hearing that he was assassinated, he was so moved that he immediately did this sculpture. Now, he later talked about Gandhi. I have never seen such a calm yet smart man in my life. What briskness of movement! He appeared to be springing when he walked. Reminiscing again of Gandhi, he said, the Dandi March left a strong imprint on my psyche. Nanda Babu had done one. Nice work. The very mention of Gandhi's name brings to mind the Dandi March and the Naukali Gandhi. The two faces are distinct. One is a symbol of courage and strength, the other of heartbreaking grief. What days were those? In Naukali, Beliagata, nothing but blood. Hindus killing Muslims and vice versa. Fresh blood drenched Bengal soil every day. Do we have a place to hide our grief and shame? Would this have been the case had politics moved on its rightful path? Politics means education, the knowledge about one's country, about preserving it, about building it. What is a nation after all but its people? Those people are left on one side and politics goes on another. Now this is Ramkingar. Now, so in a sense, Ramkingar's Gandhi is the tragic image of Gandhi of Naukali, striding across the killing fields of Naukali, strewn with skulls. And I just show you the map. I'm sure many of you should be familiar with the long walk he had. The points show the walk that Gandhi took in Naukali over a period. He was moving, staying there, and walking across Naukali. And so for him, his Gandhi was the Gandhi of Naukali, walking across the field. So you might see why this skull at the feet of thing, and beneath it is written, the apostle of peace, of non-violence. Now, people ask, why did he put the skull there? Because he's the Gandhi of Naukali. He's triumphing over death, maybe in the way that Nadaraja does. So stamping something under your feet doesn't mean necessarily violence, but it can be triumphing over violence. Now, this is Shantiniketan's engagement with Gandhi till his death. It continued even a little after. For Nandalal, his final thing was working for the constitution. Rajendra Prasad again connected with this place. He was probably the one who asked Nandalal to do different and very, in his philosophies, quite at variance with Gandhian methods. He is also acknowledging Gandhi as the father of the nation. And this is a speech that he delivered in 1944 over the radio, from Rangoon. So he's quoting that nonetheless. So in a sense, all this puts Gandhi at the center of our modern nation. Now, for Nandalal, it was a very long personal journey from the Swadeshi movement in 1904 onwards to the illustration of the Constitution. Now, but this also does something else. If you look at it from, not from Nandalal's perspective, but from our own, then we might also think what is happening. In a way, by embedding Gandhi in the Constitution, also marked the consecration of a much sanitized Gandhi as the tutelar deity or patron saint of the Indian nation, cleansed him of certain uncomfortable idealism and anarchism that was part of Gandhi. This marks the beginning of Gandhi's posthumous official life as a mascot of all causes and master of none. So that is what we do to him today. Now, a second engagement with Gandhian ideas came in his birth centenary year. And I shall discuss briefly two artists, from Shantiniketan, who contributed to this. The first person was K.G. Subramanian, and the second is A. Ramachandran. Subramanian was the elder, and when he was attracted to Gandhi while he was in school, and he participated in the freedom movement in 1942 for participating in the Quit India movement. He was imprisoned and thrown out of college. So he's another person who came to Shantiniketan after being thrown out of, all government institutions and moving from Gandhi to Tagore in some things. So when he was asked to do something, the government had what we all know now, the Gandhi Darshan, and Charles Correa was asked to design this place, and artists were asked to contribute works to the Gandhi Darshan. The government, it was in a sense a government project in that sense, and the government had offered some money. Actually 10,000 rupees to each artist. So all the other artists, except these two, they did small works which they thought is equivalent to 10,000 rupees. But these two artists decided to do something which was not connected with the amount they were getting from the government, but something that their ideas about Gandhi. And so Subramanian did, in a huge quadrangle, 3 sculptural installations. So this is the first one, which showed a kind of wheel. Sorry, I think that is. So this wheel, when you look from the beginning, front, it's like this, and you can see it has these, it's a wheel of hands. So it represented for him the idea of human cooperation, which was the basis of all progress for Gandhi. And behind that, the wheel actually comes forward, and behind that, in ceramics, he did what might be called products of rural arts. So in a sense, and in all these, he also wrote certain text from, he called this, India of my dreams. He was borrowing the title from one of collection of Gandhi's essays, and he takes on 3 central ideas in that. The first is the cooperation of men in creating India. And he also quoted one of Gandhi's favorite quotation from Gita, that every man finds fulfillment through dedicated pursuit of work. The second structure was like a kind of bovine figure, like a cow-like figure, again projecting out of a wall. And so that was like, it was based on you can see in places like Gujarat, they use chests to keep stored grains. So he turned one of those chests into a Kamadhenu kind of figure, a village deity. And behind, he had plans of village streets and houses. And in this, he had the quotation that if villages of India perish, India also perishes. The third one was this structure, which he called a casket. And in the central structure, he had used pieces of textile pressed between, perspex, and which represented various religions. And on the side, which opened like a gate, he had these other quotations from Gandhi. There are as many religions as there are individuals, and God has as many names as there are creatures, and so we call him the nameless. And since he was many forms, we also call him formless. Now, Subramanian, this, as I said, was not simply an opportunity as an artist. It was also an opportunity for him to talk about what he believed in were the central ideas of Gandhi that were relevant to us. Now, unfortunately, many of you will remember that 1969 was also the year of the first major communal riot in India after independence, which happened in the state where Gandhi came from and also where Subramanian lived then, Gujarat. And then he wrote this little book for children, illustrated, called When God Made Them, the Animals, He Made Them All Alike. So this is a fable he wrote against communal violence. That if we were all made by God, we are all made in the same way, from the same mold. But then we create differences and fight over that. So it was a wonderful kind of thing, and he wrote it for children because he thought this message has to go to children. So he's responding to Gandhi in the same year in two different ways. Now, like most government events, what happens is once the occasion is over, you allow it to go to waste. So this is what happened with Subramanian's Gandhi project. It became a go down for Gandhi. When I went in 1913, nobody there even knew of the India of my dreams back then. And finally, I managed to locate it. It was locked up, and I went in and I found this. Now, the other person who kind of did something interesting was Raza. He did this as a very large mural on wood, and he talked about Gandhi as that he's the man of peace in a century of violence, because the 20th century was being a period of great violence. So what he does is that he did various drawings of Gandhi. I mean, he did these studies of Gandhi, legs, hands, faces, etc. But then, in the end, he limited it to one motif. Gandhi was reduced to just a leg coming out of that painting. And if you look back, you have all around it very famous images of violence from 20th century art, from Battleship Potemkin to things that relate to the Nazis and so on. So all that is happening around, and the middle of that is this one man, walking man, like Ramkingas Gandhi, stepping out of this age of violence. And behind it, you can see are these large number of Buddhas, which actually it's painted all across Asia. You can see this. I mean, which represents the miracle of Saraswati. So in a way, by putting it, connecting this leg of Gandhi with that image, is also to tell that if this was Buddha's miracle, that even what Gandhi did in this age of violence is a kind of miracle. But while he was doing that, he also did a drawing which shows all Gandhi's belongings thrown into a wheelbarrow to be thrown away, like trash. Now, this was not about Gandhi, but this drawing is about us, what we are doing to him. In fact, just before he did this, he also did two other things, which was based on the Bible, of Christ's body being thrown away like that, after being killed. So, in a sense, he was aware of what we are doing to Gandhi, that we are commemorating in a way, but we are also throwing him away in a way. And this idea lasted with him for many years, and he did recently a sculpture. I mean, he did several versions of that. I'm just going to show you one of them. And you can see that he's focusing on various things first, then he comes to just the hands and the face. So his Gandhi is just this kind of strange figure with just hands coming out of the figure. And you might say that this is a memorial in a way to Gandhi. But Gandhi as this person who humbly salutes us, who is, offering friendship to us. So this is the humble gesture of prayer and peaceful fraternity in a sense that is good. And only these elements, his legs and his hands and his face, comes out of the sheep, which is rather strange because it seems to suggest something like a sheath or something like a seed out of which this is sprouting. And what he does, it is vertical and he puts it on a pedestal so that we have a face-to-face encounter with Gandhi. And on the pedestal, he quotes Einstein's famous quote of Gandhi, about Gandhi, which he says, generations to come, it may well be, will scarce believe that such a man as this one ever in flesh and blood walked upon the earth. So that is embossed on the pedestal. And if you want to read that, because that is written in such a way, we have to walk around the sculpture. And when we walk around and go behind the sculpture, we see this. There is a red hole in that sculpture, which is the bullet mark. And beneath it is written Hera. So in a sense, what he's trying to suggest is if Gandhi is appealing for fraternity and he is this humble person, making this appeal to us, what we have done is actually murder him, annihilate him. We are probably annihilating him again and again in a way. And so this is not about Gandhi, it's not a memorial to Gandhi, but it's also it is a reminder to us about what we have done with him. Thank you very much. And